So my talk today is on questioning, and the reason I chose questioning is because I think it's one of the most important ways to not only differentiate in your classroom to make sure that you can check the learning, but also there's so many great speakers out there that have said that this is one of the most important tools of the teacher, and that most of the time spent testing students in class is actually done through questioning. So what I'm going to do today is just go over a couple of reasons why testing is important. Questioning is important. I'm going to talk about some of the ways you can do that, and some of the things to look out for as well, because it is massively important. I think so anyway. It's because I like to talk. It's probably my favorite measure anyway. So here we go. All right. So firstly, the basis for all questions, and if you've been on your PGCE or you've done your NQT, you would have definitely had this drummed into you back in university about Bloom's taxonomy and the addition, the Anderson's, the one that adapted it, the one I've got up here now. And how important this has become for two things really. Setting your objectives out for class so that you make sure that you have a mix of different conceptual skills that students have to master by the end of a period. And I remember on my PGC and both my mentors, they drilled it into me that you should try and do a 2-2-2. So try and have your first objective. I know some people do bronze, silver, gold, whatever you've chosen to do. Have maybe something where all students all of the students or most of the students should be able to understand or to remember something by the end of the lesson, to be able to recall key information. But then you want students to move up Bloom's taxonomy to start using things like application of knowledge, to be able to compare and contrast, and to distinguish between bits of information before going on to making a judgment, some sort of evaluative response at the end. And that usually forms the basis of what we use in history. I know that the English departments and science department use it, is using a why question to have a good inquiry question in every lesson that students should be able to attempt at the end, or even be able to discuss. I've put some examples on the side, and Bloom's is great because in the 50s when Bloom came up with this, he wanted people to start thinking about the types of skills they were using. If you just do question, answer, it's basic recall, comprehension, and you write down the bottom, low cognitive thinking, very good for recall and checking, but very low diagnostic for really into the conceptual nature of your subject, and understanding the links that bring the bigger picture. The further up you go through Bloom, the more you're asking students to then actually show what they know and apply it to a different scenario, to try and maybe look, instead of saying what the characters did and where they went and how they did it, to start saying, well, what's the difference between the characters? What were their intentions? What were their motives? Why were they different? And then by the end, looking at creating a piece of work, like for example, now pretend you're one of the characters, write a diary entry. And so Bloom's is great for that, but also Bloom's is great for questioning. And this is why I mentioned it, is because Bloom's gives you the verbs to be able to elicit those type of skills from the students. So, just define something, tell me something. It's so simple recall, but you go up and you say, right now, I want you to defend this argument or come up with a counter argument or compare. And in doing so, you get higher cognitive thinking from your students. So I want to go through some of the techniques that I found really useful, because I'm very much a sort of, I tend to throw everything out of the box at the beginning of a lesson. I go, right, guys, what did we do last lesson? What do we learn about this? And the hands go up in the air and it's all very exciting. And then all of a sudden you've picked your top student, your second, your third, and the ones who don't really know much kept their hands down. And suddenly then your star students are dominating the section and you can't really gauge whether the students have learned, all the students. And good questions should always try and engage all the students, even if it's directed at one person. You should always be engaging all students. And sometimes the best way to do that is to use this hands-down questioning. It's so simple, and it's one of the early things you learn on your PGCE. But really, the benefit, and I have to drum it into myself, no, I have to pick the students. I know it feels a bit harsh, but it gets every student thinking. And Rosenshine, I remember when we were doing our PGCE, some of you guys would have looked at Rosenshine. It was all about ask the question first, pose the question, get them all to have to think that it could be me, so I have to know the answer. If they're all thinking, they're all engaged. Even if you pick one student to answer, all students have learned from this activity because they have to think of the answer, they've recalled it, and they've corrected it when they got it wrong in their mind, or whether somebody got it right. I feel validated, I got it right. So asking the question first gets them all engaged. And there's also that idea of, are you going to use open and mixed questions? I think it was Dylan William. We all looked at the Inside the Black Box. I think everybody's looked at that for AFL. 80% of the questions we ask in the classroom are closed questions, then 20% are open. So what are we going to do? Are we going to use a mix of them? What kind of questions are we going to ask? So what happened? How did it happen? And then open it up and say, so why? Can you come up with a counter argument? What is the benefit of using those kind of questions? How deep do you want to get? Some of the things to definitely think about with this, and what a lot of the research now is, how long are we giving students to answer? How quickly? And you guys right now should be thinking about, well, how long do I actually wait? 3 seconds? The average wait time tends to be 3 seconds before you go, hang on, all right, we'll get someone to help you. And of course, students, they develop at different times. Some students have to receive the question, think, and then think of a way they're going to present their answer. And 3 seconds isn't enough before you bounce. It can be quite demoralizing if you do that, and it will discourage. So good question. You need to make a decision. How long am I going to wait? Am I going to wait the full 10 seconds that's recommended by a lot of different researchers? That's something you need to think about. You know your students and how quick they are. Another thing as well is thinking about the type of questions. If you're using closed questions, they're brilliant for quick fire, rapid, so what happened? When did it happen? Why did you do it? Quick. If you're doing that, it's going to have lower diagnostic power because it can lead to some fluke answers. Students will chime up with an answer, or someone will whisper the answer to them and they shout it out and they get the answer right, but you need to be able to use a mix of open questions. So tell me a little bit more about that. Why would this have happened? What was its intentions? It gets the students to think a bit deeper about it. So you have to do that, but you have to realize using these type of questions will take time. So if you're going to use questioning, you need to allot a certain amount of time knowing that you'll use what you're using it for. If it's diagnostic and you are checking that they've understood and they can really relate to the last lesson, that's fine. If you're just checking something you've just watched in a video, how long are you going to spend on that? Chorus answers, I'm a bandit for this. I use chorus answers all the time. 3, 2, 1, answer. But of course, again, it's not recommended to use chorus answers because students will perhaps be quicker than others to respond, and you get that problem again. There is also the risk that by asking one student, you only answered 3 questions. Only 3 students have been engaged. So how can I involve the whole class? And so that's why I'm coming on to my next tip, which is about the think, pair, share. And I know this is the classic, that sort of have a think on your own, so 15 seconds, think on yourselves, then spend 15 seconds talking to a friend, and then I'm going to ask one of you guys to give me the answer. And that's brilliant, but that one again, if you're only asking 3 questions, you're only going to get 3 sets of 2 students involved. 6 students are involved in that. But it has had that discussion, and there's that great impact of being differentiated as well. This was my go-to in my lesson plans. I remember on my NQT and my PGCE was, it's good differentiation because a weaker student or a lower ability student will be able to chat about it with someone who's higher ability, and they will both work out the answer together. Well, it is very helpful, but again, if you want to extend that and make it group work, I've found some of the best question I've done has been to receive one answer from a table of maybe 4 or 5 students. And the benefit of that is it leads to much greater collaboration, especially if you've got an open question, like, for example, we do in history, what problems did Elizabeth I have when she took over the throne? Or what were the reasons why World War I started? Well, there's loads of answers for that. So you can ask students, now all of you collaborate, come up with ideas, 3, 4, 5 answers, and I want you to give me one of them. And the best thing about doing that is that you get all of them involved thinking about it. They take a shared responsibility and not embarrassing themselves by giving weak answers. But also as well, you get a much higher response rate because instead of just having 2 students that both didn't know the answer, suddenly you've got a group that's putting loads of ideas in a pot. It's great recall. It's great differentiation as well. And there's also an added niche. If you elect a spokesperson, one person who can give you the response, that person can be tactically done, not just for discipline. If you've got a sort of unengaged student who sits back, doesn't really get involved in the group chats, suddenly he's interested, he's engaged, because he knows you're coming to him. So you can engage him. You can also use it to motivate lower ability students to get involved in the discussion, to have some sort of response as well. So electing a spokesperson is really good. And you do get multiple answers from lots of groups, increased response rate. So be careful with your questions. Definitely get groups involved. And pick people very strategically. And I just always worry about the dominance of one person. So always be careful about that one person in a group who does dominate. There is a dominating person in each group. But of course, you can alleviate that. You know your students, you'll get to know your students, and definitely have some fun with it. It can be very interesting, and you get some interesting results. Okay, next one. I got another tip here. This is one of my favourite ones, and I didn't like it on my PGCE. I have to say, I didn't even try it on my PGCE, even though it was recommended to me. And I regret it because actually I've used it more now than I ever have. The pause, pounce and bounce is brilliant for. It's sometimes called basketball question as well, because you can pose your question and again you wait, you pause, give them that 10 seconds. Everyone in the room is now thinking of the answer. Then you can pounce, not don't do it aggressively, but you can jump to someone and say, right, what do you think? What's the answer? But the benefit is then you bounce it to someone else, and you can do that to different degrees. You can go to a lower ability student first and say, right, what do you think of this? What's the basic answer? Give me the entry level answer. Great, I've got a win from him. Brilliant, he's got a win, he's happy. Then I bounce it to another lower ability student, and I could say, well, can we add anything onto that? Is there anything we can add onto that? Is there any extra information? You can bounce it to a higher ability student and say, right, can you think of a counter argument to that? Do you agree with that response? Okay, is there anything else that we can add? So you jump around the room with this. The same question has bounced around. Suddenly, you've got people giving counter arguments. You've involved greater numbers of students. You've encouraged maybe a debate. Okay, so there's two different sides to the story. Right, everyone on one side, everyone who thinks this, and one side think that. Why did you go over this side? Suddenly you've got a discussion going. So pouncing and bouncing can be really good for adding on to answers, and it's really good if there's a multiple complexity to a response. I find in history, example, World War I is a great topic when you say, so tell me about what started World War I. Okay, is there anything else maybe that's more important than that? Bounce it, bounce it, bounce it. Come back to you. Do you agree with what they've said? Have you changed your view? So it's brilliant. That's a really great one as well. Again, just be careful how you pounce, because you don't literally pounce on someone. You don't want to shock and scare someone. So you've got to know your students. Get to know your students this way and try and ask the right people. And again, you can be very choosy with your differentiation as well, how you do it. I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to bounce on myself. Last one, I wanted to talk about this one, Socratic questioning. Socrates was a really irritating philosopher, very fun person to read about. But again, it's a great way, Socratic question is a great way to engage more. When you ask quick fire questions, you tend to get short responses, just, all right, what was this, when was that, when was this, quick. And in order to delve deeper, sometimes you can say, okay, now tell me why. Okay, so for example, I've put here, why did World War I begin? Someone will say, oh, everyone hated each other. Fantastic, great response. Okay, can you defend that? Why did they hate each other? Oh, well, Germany and France hated each other because they didn't like each other. Why? Because they had a war ages ago. Great, okay, good. So you go further and further into it, okay, and you really, and the benefit of that is that in asking students why, not only is it fun for me to irritate them, but also it really gets them to defend their position. I said this answer, now I can defend it and use evidence to back it up. Excellent historical skills, excellent debating skills, good for English. It just makes them justify their position. And you can also test to see if they really do know it or whether they just shouted out any old rubbish. So that's a good one. They do take a bit of planning though, because you've got to have that trail of answers that you can expect to have from students. And again, you can bounce if students don't understand it and get more. And some students don't like being poked, to be fair. Some people, why? Some people don't like that. So get to know your students, and as you do it, try out these different ones. My last slide is really just some practice, some general practice from the research. Again, give loads of time for answering. I know it takes time from your lesson, but it can be worth not giving an opt-out. If a student doesn't know, well, maybe I can rephrase the question or ask a sub-question that gets you to answer this question. So can you stagger questions or scaffold questions to help them to it? You've got to decide, is it worth the time invested? Is a minute and a half on a student to get him answering that question? Have I helped that student think, oh, I can do it? Or, is it not worth the lesson time? It's up to you. You have to decide, but sometimes it's best not to give them an opt-out. Offering say it again options are really good as well. Can you just rephrase that? Because sometimes they come up with some fragmented response. Well, say it again now. Now you've given me all this gibberish. Say it again in a nice, clear and cohesive way. That's a lot better. It just gives them a chance to improve on their responses. And always be encouraging. With questioning, you're not trying to catch people out. I know some people do, not guilty, but it is a really great way to facilitate their engagement and have some fun as well. Definitely avoid things like this. That's not right. Moving on. Okay. That's going to be demoralizing for students. Try and be positive. I'm a pointer, I have to say, but I've started to sort of go, here's the question. A bit more encouraging gestures. And please don't be so impatient. Like I learned this the hard way on my PGCE. Come on, you should know this. You're year 10. No, that's only going to put them off, because they're going to think you're rushing them and that you're not patient. So give them the time that they need. I put some links, which is going to go into the PowerPoint that we put onto the Google Drive. I've just put some links, and probably one of the best ones. I know this is Dylan Black and William is like the ultimate AFL go-to, but this document here is really useful to me when I was doing my PGC and my NQT. Effective questioning, this guy called Get Gassed, he's put this like toolbox together, and there's a link here. It's free. You can just take the PDF away. Tons of ideas like thinking hats, hot seating, loads of different ideas that I haven't been able to mention today. So you can have that, and then you can click that link, and it's absolutely awesome. It's a really big, it's about 30 pages, tons of ideas. And if you want to, and if you have any questions or anything, please do follow me on Twitter. You can DM me, and I try and respond, and I'll come back to you with anything. Just that's me. Thank you very much.
Cheers, Andy. That was absolutely fantastic. Some excellent ways of developing your question. And I know for me, I've been in teaching 10 years now, and my questioning still isn't as strong as what it possibly could be. So I know I'll be taking some of those ideas, definitely. So well done, and thank you for that.